Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. They replaced me with my sister again, so I let them lose everything while watching from my penthouse. It was a ritual, a sickeningly familiar dance of disappointment, a performance played out on the stage of our family life with the predictable precision of a well-rehearsed play. The actors were always the same. Amelia, my younger sister, the perpetually distressed damsel; my parents, the ever-credulous audience; and myself, Ava Harrington, the eternally overlooked stagehand, forever relegated to the wings. The opening act always began with Amelia. She would stand before our parents, radiating a calculated innocence, an aura carefully constructed to disarm and enchant. Her eyes, a startling shade of sapphire blue that men often found themselves lost in, would widen, taking on a vulnerable, almost childlike quality. Her lips, usually curved into a confident, sometimes even haughty smile, would tremble slightly as if on the verge of tears. Then came the voice. Normally, Amelia possessed a voice as bright and bubbly as champagne, filled with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to getting her way. But in these moments it would transform, becoming fragile, almost trembling. A delicate instrument designed to pluck at the heartstrings of our parents. And finally, the inevitable words, the lines she delivered countless times before, each iteration honed to perfection, each syllable dripping with practiced helplessness. "Ava will do it. She's so much better at these things than I am." The delivery was crucial. It wasn't a request, not really. It was a pronouncement, a statement of fact presented with such an air of self-deprecation, such an undercurrent of poor fragile me, that it bypassed any logical argument. It appealed directly to my parents' deeply ingrained biases, their unwavering belief in Amelia's inherent goodness and my own supposed strength, and like clockwork they would fall for it every single time. Their reactions were as predictable as the sunrise. My mother, Eleanor Harrington, a woman who prided herself on her social grace and unwavering composure, would soften her perfectly sculpted features, relaxing into an expression of maternal concern. My father, Charles Harrington, the stoic, business-minded patriarch of our family, would nod in solemn agreement, his eyes reflecting a mixture of relief that the problem had been so easily solved and a subtle, almost imperceptible disappointment in me. This instance, however, was particularly stinging. A slap in the face that resonated far deeper than any previous slight. The annual Harrington Industries Gala, a cornerstone event in the New York social calendar, and a crucial business opportunity for our family's company, was my project. Not ours, not the family's, but mine. I, Ava Harrington, had poured months of painstaking, relentless effort into its orchestration. It wasn't just a party. It was a meticulously crafted masterpiece, a symphony of details designed to impress, to enchant, and to solidify Harrington Industries' position as a leader in the luxury goods market. From the initial concept, a Venetian masquerade ball, a nod to my father's lifelong love of Italian art and history, to the final excruciatingly detailed seating chart, every element bore the imprint of my dedication and meticulous planning. I had spent weeks researching Venetian traditions, poring over historical texts and art books, ensuring that every detail, from the mask to the music, was authentic and evocative. I'd flown to Venice myself, hand-picking the Murano glass chandeliers that would illuminate the ballroom, negotiating with artisans in broken Italian, fueled by espresso and a relentless pursuit of perfection. The catering had been another Herculean task. Amelia, with her supposed refined palate acquired, I suspected, more from glossy magazines than actual experience, had initially insisted on a menu filled with trendy but ultimately tasteless fusion dishes. I had gently but firmly steered her and my parents towards a more classic, elegant approach, a 7-course meal showcasing the finest seasonal ingredients and highlighting the talents of our company's newly acquired Michelin-starred chef. It was a delicate dance, a constant balancing act between appeasing Amelia's whims and ensuring the culinary integrity of the event. The guest list was a minefield of social and political sensitivities. Every invitation, every seating arrangement was a strategic calculation designed to foster connections, strengthen alliances, and avoid any potential offense. I'd spent countless hours poring over profiles, researching relationships, and meticulously crafting a seating chart that was a masterpiece of social engineering. And then there was the entertainment. Amelia predictably had advocated for a performance by a cutting-edge performance artist, she'd discovered at a downtown gallery opening. I'd had to discreetly veto that suggestion, replacing it with a world-renowned string quartet and a troupe of classically trained Venetian dancers. Even the floral arrangements were a testament to my unwavering attention to detail. I'd initially chosen lilies, their elegant simplicity mirroring the overall aesthetic of the gala, but then a casual remark from my father, a wistful mention of his late mother's love for hydrangeas, had sent me scrambling. I'd spent an entire afternoon on the phone with florists across the city, finally securing a shipment of rare blue-tinged hydrangeas flown in directly from a specialist grower in Holland. It was an extravagance, yes, but one I knew would touch my father deeply. A subtle tribute to his beloved mother. And of course there was the speech. I'd labored over it for weeks, crafting each sentence with the precision of a poet. It was a delicate balance. A heartfelt expression of gratitude to our loyal clients and partners, a confident articulation of our company's vision for the future, and a sprinkling of self-deprecating humor to charm the audience and disarm any potential critics. I practiced it I stood in front of the mirror countless times, honing my delivery, perfecting my intonation, ensuring that every word resonated with sincerity and conviction. This gala wasn't just a party. It was a culmination of my efforts, a testament to my capabilities, a chance to finally step out of Amelia's shadow and shine. It was my opportunity to prove once and for all that I was more than just the strong one, the reliable one, the one who always fixed things. But Amelia wanted it. Not the work, not the responsibility, not the months of relentless planning and execution. She craved the spotlight, the adulation, the admiring glances, the opportunity to play the role of the gracious, beautiful hostess, the belle of the ball. And as always, she had found the perfect excuse. Her upcoming ballet recital. It wasn't the Metropolitan Opera, mind you. It wasn't even a professional company. It was a minor performance at a local dance studio. A showcase for aspiring ballerinas, most of whom were still in their teens. Amelia, at 25, was decidedly not a prodigy. She had taken up ballet late in life, more as a social activity than a serious pursuit. But she possessed a natural grace, a photogenic beauty, and an uncanny ability to project an image of delicate artistry, and that, in my family's eyes, was all that mattered. "Ava, darling," my mother began, her voice dripping with that syrupy sweetness she reserved for moments when she was about to ask me to sacrifice something significant, something that mattered deeply to me. "Amelia is simply overwhelmed. The pressure, you know? A young artist needs to focus, to conserve her energy, to be at her absolute best for her performance." She laid a perfectly manicured hand on Amelia's arm, a gesture of maternal protection and solidarity that, as always, felt like a subtle, almost imperceptible rejection of me. My carefully constructed composure, the mask of calm professionalism I had cultivated over years of navigating our family's complex dynamics, threatened to crack. The words I had so meticulously rehearsed for the gala, the speech that was meant to be my triumph, dissolved into a bitter, acrid taste in my mouth. Overwhelmed, I repeated the word, laced with disbelief and a rising tide of frustration. "Mother, she hasn't even glanced at the seating chart. She doesn't know the difference between a canapé and a crudite. She thinks vichyssoise is a type of cheese." The last statement was a slight exaggeration, but it served to underscore the sheer absurdity of the situation. I've spent months on this. Every single detail, from the lighting to the linens, has been my responsibility. My voice rose slightly, a tremor of barely suppressed anger breaking through my carefully cultivated control. My father, a man who prided himself on his calm, unflappable demeanor, a man who built an empire on shrewd decisions and unwavering resolve, intervened. "Ava," he said, his voice a low rumble of disapproval, a tone that usually silenced any further protest. "Control yourself. This is not a negotiation. This is not a board meeting. This is about family. Your sister needs your support. Family comes first, always." He fixed me with a stern look, the one that had for years effectively shut down any dissent, any expression of my own needs or desires. Amelia, sensing victory, sensing that the scales had tipped irrevocably in her favor, delivered her final blow. A master class in manipulation, a performance worthy of an Oscar. "It's true, Ava," she whispered, her voice a fragile thread of sound. "I just can't. I'll fall apart. The pressure, it's too much. I'll ruin everything. She paused, allowing her words to sink in, then added with a perfectly timed tremor in her voice. You're so strong, Ava. So organized, so capable. You're the only one who can handle this. You always are. She even managed a few perfectly placed tears glistening convincingly on her expertly applied mascara, a testament to her dedication to the craft of emotional manipulation. The strong one, the reliable one, the fixer, the one who always cleaned up the messes, smoothed over the cracks, and made everything work seamlessly, effortlessly, without complaint. It was a role I'd played my entire life, a gilded cage built on the foundations of their expectations and fueled by my own desperate, unrequited yearning for their approval, for their love, for a simple acknowledgement of my worth. This time, though, something was different. The usual wave of resignation, the familiar ache of disappointment, the ingrained habit of acquiescence, they didn't come. Instead, a cold, hard clarity settled over me, a sense of detachment that felt both terrifying and liberating. I looked at my parents, at their expectant faces, their blind faith in Amelia's fabricated fragility, their complete and utter obliviousness to my own feelings. I looked at Amelia, at her perfectly composed expression, the subtle smirk playing at the corner of her lips, the glint of triumph in her eyes, and I realized with chilling certainty that this would never change. This dynamic, this pattern of sacrifice and manipulation would continue indefinitely unless I broke the cycle, unless I refused to play the role they had assigned me. Fine, I said, my voice remarkably steady, devoid of any trace of the turmoil raging within me. Amelia can have the gala. My parents exchanged relieved glances, their tension visibly easing. My father beamed, his smile wide and genuine, a rare display of affection that in that moment felt utterly hollow. That's my girl, he said, his voice filled with paternal pride. Always so understanding, so accommodating, so strong. Amelia, her tears miraculously vanished, replaced by a dazzling smile that could light up a room, gave me a look of pure, unadulterated triumph. Thank you, Ava, she said, her voice now infused with a saccharine sweetness that grated on my nerves. You're the best sister ever. I don't know what I'd do without you. I didn't smile back. I didn't offer any words of comfort or reassurance. I simply met her gaze, my expression unreadable. Just one thing, I said, my voice so calm and measured, my gaze unwavering. I paused, allowing the silence to stretch to build anticipation. I'm taking a vacation, a long one. The smiles faltered, the celebratory atmosphere evaporated. My parents exchanged a look of bewildered confusion. A vacation? My mother asked, her perfectly plucked eyebrows arching in disbelief. But the gala is next week, and the Peterson account and the quarterly reports. Her voice trailed off, her mind struggling to comprehend the implications of my sudden, unexpected announcement. Amelia can handle it, I interrupted, my voice devoid of any inflection, any hint of emotion. She's so capable, isn't she? So organized, so artistic. And I'm sure you'll both be there to guide her, to support her, to ensure that everything runs smoothly. I allowed a trace of sarcasm to creep into my tone, a subtle barb aimed at their hypocrisy. I turned and walked away, ignoring their protests, their pleas, their sudden belated realization that perhaps, just perhaps, they'd made a colossal mistake. I didn't look back. I didn't hesitate. I simply walked out of the room, out of the house, and in a sense out of the life I had always known. The next morning, fueled by a potent mixture of anger, resentment, and a newfound sense of liberation, I was on a private jet, soaring above the clouds, heading towards my penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park in New York City. It was a sanctuary I had meticulously created for myself, a world far removed from the suffocating expectations and manipulative dynamics of my family. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. I had built the Harrington Industries empire, made shrewd investments, diversified my portfolio, and cultivated a network of contacts outside of my family's sphere of influence. They knew about it, of course, my little hobby, as they condescendingly referred to it. My financial independence was a source of mild amusement to them, a quirky pastime that kept me occupied while Amelia pursued her true passions, her artistic endeavors, her social butterfly existence. They never took it seriously. They never imagined that it would become my escape route, my lifeline, my path to freedom. From my floor-to-ceiling windows 40 stories above the bustling streets of Manhattan, I watched the city unfold beneath me, a breathtaking panorama of lights and shadows, a tapestry of human endeavor. I sipped my champagne, the delicate bubbles fizzing on my tongue, a taste of independence, a flavor of liberation I hadn't realized I craved so deeply. The first few days were a blur of blissful solitude and quiet contemplation. I slept late, indulging in the luxury of unhurried mornings, a stark contrast to the relentless schedule I'd always maintained. I read books, stacks of them, devouring novels and biographies, losing myself in worlds far removed from my own. I wandered through museums, gazing at masterpieces, allowing the beauty of art to soothe my soul. I indulged in long, luxurious baths, soaking in the silence, letting the warm water wash away the accumulated stress and tension of years. I ignored the frantic calls and texts from my parents, the increasingly desperate pleas from Amelia. Their voices, once so powerful and influential, now held no sway over me. I had quite literally turned off the noise. Then the news started to trickle in, small whispers at first, faint rumors circulating through the social grapevine. Then a growing chorus of concern, and finally a cacophony of disaster. A symphony of failure played out in the headlines of the business journals and the gossip columns of the tabloids. The gala, under Amelia's expert guidance and my parents' doting but ultimately clueless supervision, had been a catastrophe of epic proportions. The Venetian theme, so carefully curated, had been reduced to a cheesy, over-the-top spectacle complete with gondolas and a reflecting pool, one of which predictably capsized. Costumed actors looked more like rejected extras from a low-budget opera than authentic Venetian revelers. The caterers, misinformed about the menu and underpaid due to Amelia's cost-cutting measures, she had splurged on a new designer gown instead, and generally treated with disdain, delivered a subpar meal that was both bland and bewildering. Guests complained of lukewarm appetizers, rubbery chicken, and a dessert that tasted suspiciously like instant pudding. The guest list, mangled beyond recognition by Amelia's haphazard additions and deletions, was a bizarre and incongruous mix of socialites, ceaseless celebrities, distant relatives nobody had seen in decades, and a handful of bewildered-looking catering staff who had been mistakenly invited. The carefully crafted seating chart, a masterpiece of social diplomacy, had been completely disregarded, resulting in a chaotic free-for-all that left several prominent guests fuming. The entertainment, a last-minute replacement chosen by Amelia after she decided the string quartet was too boring, was a disastrously inappropriate performance art piece involving a live goat, a bucket of paint, and a monologue in a language nobody understood. It had offended half the attendees and bewildered the other half, prompting a flurry of scathing reviews on social media. But the true disaster, the catastrophic failure that sent shockwaves through the company, was the loss of the Peterson account. Mr. Peterson, a notoriously demanding and influential client, had been the cornerstone of Har Industries' expansion plans. His multimillion-dollar deal was crucial to securing our future, launching a new line of luxury products, and solidifying our position as a market leader. Amelia, completely out of her depth, had managed to alienate him within the first 5 minutes of their meeting. She had been unprepared, uninformed, and utterly uninterested in his concerns. My parents, frantic and flustered, had attempted to salvage the situation, but their efforts only made things worse. Mr. Peterson, insulted and enraged, had stormed out of the gala, taking his business with him. The fallout was swift and brutal. Other investors, spooked by the gala fiasco and the loss of the Peterson account, started pulling out, sending the company's stock price into a free fall. The carefully constructed empire that my father had spent decades building, the legacy he had hoped to pass on to his daughters, was crumbling before his eyes, collapsing under the weight of incompetence, mismanagement, and a profound lack of understanding. I watched it all unfold from my penthouse, a detached observer, a silent witness to the implosion of my family's dynasty. I followed the news reports with a clinical detachment, scrolling through articles detailing the plummeting stock prices, the canceled contracts, and the increasingly desperate attempts by my parents to salvage what remained of their shattered empire. I read the scathing reviews of the gala, the snarky comments on social media, and the gleeful pronouncements of schadenfreude from our competitors. I felt nothing, no satisfaction, no glee, no vindictive pleasure in their downfall. The anticipated rush of triumph, the sweet taste of revenge I had perhaps subconsciously expected, never materialized. Instead, I was left with a profound sense of emptiness, a hollow ache in the pit of my stomach that resonated with a strange, unsettling sadness. This was what I had wanted, wasn't it? To show them, to make them see, to finally be acknowledged, to be valued for my abilities, for my contributions, for myself. I had yearned for their recognition, for their respect, for their love for so long. I had played the role of the dutiful daughter, the capable one, the silent shadow, always striving to meet their expectations, always falling short. And now they had lost everything. The company, the prestige, the social standing, the carefully cultivated image of success and stability. It was all gone, and I, the daughter they had overlooked, the daughter they had taken for granted, was the only one left standing. But the victory felt hollow, brittle, devoid of any real meaning. It was a Pyrrhic victory, a triumph achieved at too great a cost. The destruction of their world hadn't brought me the satisfaction I had craved. It had only revealed the depth of the chasm that separated us, the unbridgeable gulf of misunderstanding and resentment that had defined our relationship for so long. One evening, as the sun set over the Manhattan skyline, casting long, dramatic shadows across the city, I sat on my balcony wrapped in a cashmere blanket, sipping a glass of expensive wine. The city lights twinkled below, a vast glittering expanse of human activity, a constant hum of energy and ambition. My phone rang. It was my father. His number, which I hadn't deleted but had certainly ignored for weeks, flashed on the screen. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the decline button. The urge to silence his voice, to shut out the inevitable pleas and recriminations, was strong. But something, curiosity perhaps, or a lingering sense of familial obligation, a vestige of the conditioning I was still struggling to overcome, compelled me to answer. Ava, his voice was weak, shaky, a far cry from the booming, confident tone I remembered. It sounded defeated. "Dad," I replied, my voice neutral, devoid of any emotion. There was a long silence on the other end, punctuated only by his ragged breathing. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head, the struggle to find the right words, the words that might somehow bridge the chasm, the words that might bring me back. "Ava, please," he finally said, his voice cracking with desperation. "You have to come back. You have to help us. You're the only one who can fix this." The words hung in the air, heavy with expectation, with the weight of years of unspoken assumptions. He was asking me once again to be the strong one, the responsible one, the fixer. He was asking me to step back into the role I had so decisively rejected. I took a deep breath, the cool night air filling my lungs. "I can't," I said, my voice firm but not unkind. "I'm not coming back." Another silence, longer this time, filled with the unspoken weight of his disappointment, his despair. "We've lost everything, Ava," he finally whispered, his voice barely audible. "The company, the house, everything." I closed my eyes, picturing the grand mansion in Greenwich, the sprawling estate where I had grown up, the scene of countless family gatherings, of lavish parties, of carefully orchestrated displays of wealth and success. I pictured the opulent ballroom, the site of so many galas, now empty and silent, a hollow shell of its former glory. "I know," I said softly, the words devoid of any triumph, any satisfaction. I felt a pang of something, not sympathy exactly, but a faint echo of the shared history, the familial bonds that, however strained, still existed. "We made mistakes, Ava," he continued, his voice gaining a sliver of strength. We didn't appreciate you. We took you for granted. We relied on you too much, and we didn't see you, not really." He was finally admitting it, the truth I had known all along, the truth I had longed to hear. He was acknowledging my worth, my capabilities, my contributions, but it was too late, far too late. "I know, Dad," I repeated, the words tinged with a weariness that went beyond the present situation, a weariness that encompassed a lifetime of unspoken grief. "Amelia," he began, then hesitated. She's not handling it well. She doesn't understand." I could imagine Amelia stripped of her privileges, her social standing, her carefully constructed facade of effortless grace. I could picture her flailing, lost and bewildered, unable to cope with the harsh realities of a world that no longer revolved around her. "I'm sorry," I said, the words automatic, a reflex response to his stress, but I wasn't sorry, not really. I had warned them. I had tried to tell them, but they hadn't listened. Can't you just talk to her?" he pleaded. Maybe you can help her understand. I sighed. The cycle was repeating itself. Even in ruin, they were still relying on me to fix things, to smooth over the cracks. Everything right, I can't, Dad, I said. My voice final, I've built my own life now. I have my own responsibility. I have my own path. There was another long silence, this one filled with a palpable sense of finality. I understand, he said, his voice barely a whisper, and then he hung up. I sat there for a long time, staring out at the city lights, the phone still clutched in my hand. The conversation had left me shaken, unsettled, but also strangely resolved. I had said what needed to be said. I had drawn a line in the sand, and I had finally broken free. I turned away from the window, from the dazzling spectacle of the city, and walked back into the penthouse. The silence was no longer empty, no longer unsettling. It was the silence of peace, of solitude, of self-possession. I had lost my family in a sense, but I had gained myself, and that, I realized, was a victory far greater than any I could have imagined. The following days were marked by a sense of quiet introspection. The initial shock of their complete collapse, the emotional turmoil of the phone call with my father, had subsided, leaving behind a residue of acceptance. I had done what I could. I had offered them a chance, albeit a brief and ultimately rejected one, to acknowledge their mistakes, to understand my perspective. But they were unwilling, or perhaps unable, to change, and I finally was unwilling to continue sacrificing my own well-being for their sake. I threw myself back into my work, finding solace and purpose in the projects I had cultivated, the businesses I had built, the life I had carved out for myself independent of my family's influence. My investments continued to thrive, my ventures expanded, my reputation as a shrewd businesswoman and a compassionate philanthropist grew. The penthouse, once a symbol of escape and isolation, gradually transformed into a hub of activity, a center of creativity and collaboration. I hosted meetings with investors, brainstorming sessions with my team, and informal gatherings with friends and colleagues. The silence was replaced by the hum of conversation, the clinking of glasses, the vibrant energy of a life lived fully and purposefully. One crisp autumn afternoon, several weeks after the fateful phone call, I found myself wandering through Central Park, the leaves ablaze in a riot of color, the air sharp and invigorating. It was a place I had often sought refuge in during my earlier years in the city, a sanctuary of natural beauty amidst the concrete jungle. As I walked, I reflected on the journey that had brought me to this point. The years of striving, of sacrificing, of seeking approval that never came, the sudden dramatic break, the exhilarating freedom, the subsequent emptiness, and finally the slow, gradual rebuilding of my life on my own terms. I paused by the Bethesda fountain, its waters shimmering in the sunlight, its iconic angel statue a symbol of hope and renewal. I watched the people passing by, families strolling hand in hand, couples laughing, children playing. I realized with a profound sense of clarity that I was no longer defined by my past, by my family, by their failures or their expectations. I was Ava Harrington, not the overlooked daughter, not the reliable fixer, not the silent shadow. I was Ava Harrington, entrepreneur, philanthropist, independent woman, architect of my own destiny. A figure approached, breaking my reverie. A woman elegantly dressed with a kind smile and intelligent eyes that sparkled with warmth and understanding. She introduced herself as Sarah, a venture capitalist I'd met briefly at a networking event several months before. A lifetime ago, it seemed. "Olivia, isn't it?" she asked, her voice warm and genuine, her tone devoid of any pretense or condescension. "I remember you. You made quite an impression. Your presentation on sustainable investing was inspiring. It was a small detail, a fleeting encounter, but it struck me with unexpected force." She remembered me, not my family name, not my connection to the collapsing Harrington empire, but me for my own work, my own ideas. We fell into conversation, a natural, effortless exchange of thoughts and ideas. We discussed business, art, philosophy, life. Sarah was sharp, insightful, and refreshingly honest. She didn't fawn or flatter, nor did she offer pity or condescension when I alluded vaguely to my recent family difficulties. Instead, she listened. She understood and offered a perspective I hadn't considered. A perspective born of her own experiences, her own challenges, her own triumphs. "Sometimes," she said, her gaze meeting mine with a knowing intensity, a depth of understanding that resonated deep within me, The greatest act of strength is not holding on but letting go, not fighting the current but finding a new shore, charting a new course, building a new life. Her words were like a balm to my soul, a soothing reassurance that I was not alone, that my journey, however unconventional, was valid, was worthwhile. They resonated with a truth I had been struggling to articulate, a truth I had been slowly, painfully discovering for myself. We spent the rest of the afternoon walking, talking, sharing our stories, our dreams, our ambitions. There was a connection between us, a spark of mutual respect and understanding that transcended the usual superficialities of business networking. As the sun began to set, casting long golden shadows across the park and painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Sarah turned to me, her expression thoughtful, her eyes filled with a quiet intensity. "I'm starting a new venture," she said, a spark of excitement igniting in her voice. "A social enterprise focused on empowering women entrepreneurs from disadvantaged backgrounds, giving them the tools, the resources, the support they need to build their own businesses, to achieve their own dreams." She paused, her gaze holding mine. "I've been looking for a partner, someone with your vision, your drive, and your resilience. Someone who understands the challenges, the obstacles, but also the incredible potential. All that exists within these women offered unexpected and yet strangely perfect hung in the air between us. A silent invitation, a challenge, a promise of a new beginning. It was a chance to build something new, something meaningful, something entirely my own. Something that aligned perfectly with my values and my newfound sense of purpose. It was a chance to use my skills, my experience, my hard-won wisdom, not for the benefit of a family who had never truly appreciated me, but for the betterment of others, for the empowerment of women who, like me, had been overlooked, underestimated, and denied opportunities. I looked at Sarah, at her genuine smile, at the hope and determination shining in her eyes, at the unwavering belief she had in me. A belief that was far stronger and more profound than anything I had ever received from my own family. And I knew with a certainty that surprised even myself, that this was the new shore I'd been searching for, the new path I was meant to follow. "I'm in," I said, my voice firm and clear, filled with a newfound confidence, a sense of purpose that resonated deep within my soul. We shook hands, sealing the agreement with a shared smile, a mutual understanding, a silent pact to build something extraordinary. As I walked back to my penthouse that evening, the city lights seemed to shine brighter. The air felt cleaner. The silence was no longer empty or unsettling, but filled with the promise of a new beginning, the vibrant hum of a future yet to be written. The following months were a whirlwind of activity, a blur of meetings, phone calls, strategy sessions, and late nights fueled by coffee and a shared passion. We secured funding, assembled a team of talented and dedicated individuals, and launched our first project, a mentorship program for young women in underserved communities, providing them with guidance, support, and access to the resources they needed to launch their own businesses. The work was challenging, demanding, and incredibly rewarding. It required every ounce of my energy, my focus, my creativity, but it was also exhilarating and fulfilling, a constant source of inspiration and motivation. I found myself immersed in a world far removed from the gilded cage of my former life, a world where my skills were valued, my opinions respected, and my contributions made a tangible difference in the lives of others. I was no longer simply reacting to the events around me, no longer defined by the actions of my family. I was actively shaping my own destiny, creating my own legacy, building something that mattered, something that would endure. I still saw the headlines, of course. The remnants of my family's empire, the once mighty Harrington Industries, were being auctioned off piece by piece, dismantled and dispersed like the scattered fragments of a broken dream. The grand mansion in Greenwich, the scene of so many unhappy memories, was sold to a foreign investor, its opulent interiors destined to be stripped and remodeled, its history erased. My father's pride and joy was dispersed to museums and private collectors around the world, its carefully curated pieces scattered like fallen leaves. The company itself, once a symbol of power and prestige, was dissolved, its name relegated to the dusty archives of business history. Amelia, stripped of her lavish lifestyle and social standing, had attempted a brief, disastrous foray into acting. It was a desperate attempt to cling to the spotlight, to recapture the attention she craved. The reviews were scathing, the audiences indifferent, and she quickly faded into obscurity, Another cautionary tale of privilege and wasted potential. My parents, humbled and broken, their grand pronouncements and social aspirations reduced to whispers of regret, had retreated to a small, secluded cottage in the countryside. It was a far cry from the opulent world they had once inhabited. They were shadows of their former selves, their lives stripped bare of the trappings of wealth and status, forced to confront the consequences of their choices and the emptiness of their values. One day, a small, unassuming package arrived at my office, addressed in a shaky, unfamiliar handwriting. It was a plain brown box, devoid of any markings or indications of its contents. Curiosity piqued, I carefully opened it, my heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. Inside, nestled in a bed of soft tissue paper, was a single perfect hydrangea bloom, its delicate petals a soft shade of blue, a color that echoed the rare orchids I had so painstakingly chosen for the ill-fated gala a lifetime ago. There was no note, no card, no return address, only the flower itself. A silent, enigmatic message from the past. I knew instantly who it was from. It could only be my father. A gesture of apology, regret, reconciliation, or perhaps simply a reminder, a silent acknowledgement of the daughter he had overlooked. The daughter who had finally found her own way, her own purpose, her own strength. I held the flower in my hand, its delicate fragrance filling the air. A bittersweet reminder of a life I had left behind, of a family I had lost, of a past I could never fully escape. A single tear rolled down my cheek. A tear not of sadness, not of anger, not of regret, but of something else entirely, something akin to release. It was a tear of acceptance, of understanding, of letting go. A tear that acknowledged the pain, the hurt, the years of yearning, but also celebrated the resilience, the strength, the independence I had found. I placed the hydrangea in a simple glass vase on my desk, a solitary bloom in the midst of the bustling activity of my office. A symbol of the past, a reminder of the journey, and a testament to the enduring power of hope. The penthouse, once a sanctuary of solitude, a refuge from the storms of my family life, was no longer silent. It was filled with the hum of activity, the laughter of my colleagues, the vibrant energy of a dream taking flight. I am meant to the power of collaboration, of shared purpose, of making a difference in the world. I, Ava Harrington, the woman who had once stood in the shadows, the woman who had been replaced, overlooked and underestimated, was finally standing in the light, shining brightly as a beacon of hope and inspiration for others. The view from my penthouse was still spectacular, breathtaking in its scope and grandeur. But now it was a view I had earned, a view I deserved, and a view I shared not with a family who had failed to see me, but with a world that was finally ready to embrace me for who I truly was. The snowy road, the difficult path had led me here, to this summit, to this life. And it was, at long last, a life filled with purpose, with passion, and with the enduring, unwavering belief in my own strength, my own worth, my own limitless potential. The journey had been arduous, but the destination was worth every single step.